Valentine's Day may be over, but there's still romance in the air as we examine this touching story of love between a man, his maid, and his dead girlfriend. Romance is dead, just the way he likes it. Welcome to Sick Flicks, where I take a deep dive into the cinematic sewer to help you embrace your inner gore geek. I'm Mike Bracken, aka the Horror Geek, and today we're tackling Joe D'Amato's taboo-busting classic, Beyond the Darkness. Released in 1979, Beyond the Darkness is a romantic story of forbidden love between a man and his dead girlfriend. It's like a modern-day Romeo and Juliet, with lots of weird sex, murder, and cannibalism. I mean, what's not to love about that? Director Joe D'Amato was well known for making controversial films, but this one is arguably his most infamous. We lost D'Amato and his 750 pseudonyms back in 1999, but if there was a Mount Rushmore of directors I love to cover on Sick Flicks, Joe would be up there. He was a legend.
Come regista mi definisco un artigiano professionale.
But I know what you're really wondering. Is Beyond the Darkness splattery? Let's get to the gore and find out. We fade in on this van driving through the title card. Hey, watch where you're going. Man, this is nice. After all the sick movies we've covered, it'll be a sweet change of pace to watch a movie where we just drive through the countryside with some soothing Goblin on the soundtrack. I gotta say, the full-screen generic credits over the action is a pretty bold move. It's like what's happening here isn't nearly as important as letting you know we got the raw stock from Kodak. Anyway, I guess this is how you score weed in Italy. You drive way out to the middle of nowhere to meet your dealer in some abandoned house in the woods. Seems legit. And if you didn't believe me that it was Goblin on the soundtrack, here's your proof. And director of photography Joe D'Amato, trying to fool you with his real name. I see you, Joe. Man, no wonder he drove out to the woods for this deal. That's like a Snoop Dogg-sized box of weed right there. It's like a Rob Bass song because it takes two of them to even lift it. And directed by Joe D'Amato. Really, the only thing this movie is missing is George Eastman and his 25 pseudonyms. Anyway, with the weed loaded, this dude's like, thanks, try not to smoke it all in one night. Meanwhile, Frank's like, alright, time to get home, put on the black light, crank up the Zeppelin, and get dankrupt. And in another movie, we're watching this old lady do some voodoo. Because sure, why not? Iris here is really into it, too. Just look at that face. Meanwhile, at Rome General Hospital, this woman's trying to do her best Bee Gees impression and stay alive. Look, could you please die more quietly? I'm trying to read. And is that a J&B bottle on her bedside table? Hospitals in Italy are lit. While she's busy dying, Dank Frank's home with his score. Wait a minute, it took two guys to load it, but he's just carrying it in by himself? He must have smoked some of it on the way home. Whoa, turns out that wasn't weed. It's a dead baboon. I had no idea this movie was a sequel to Shakma. And props to you if you've actually seen Shakma. It's already dead, Frank. I don't think injecting it's going to bring it back to life, unless this is a Reanimator sequel too. I'd also like to stop for a second and reflect on the fact that Frank had to go out to the middle of nowhere to procure a dead baboon. Like the Italian cops were really cracking down on the dead baboon trade, so they had to take extra precautions so they didn't get busted. After that's done, he heads upstairs. Just gonna give that baboon roofie some time to work its magic. But he's spotted by Iris, the lady from the voodoo ceremony. I mean, I guess at least all our movies are getting together early. Speaking of our other movies, over in movie number 3, Hospital Girl is still alive. I'm sorry, miss, we can't give you another shot of J&B for your pain for another 3 hours. Doctor's orders. But she can apparently have makeup.
Could I please have some makeup?
I mean, that makes sense. Maybe they're just painting her up now to save the mortician some time later. Turns out she's getting all prettied up because Frank is rushing to see her. Literally. Run, Forrest! Sorry, honey, I'd have been here sooner, but I was monkeying around back at home and lost track of the time. And sure, she's about to die, but that doesn't mean they can't make out. Then this happens. Guess he really is the kiss of death. Back at home, Frank's trying to grieve, but Iris has to make things awkward.
Iris, this morning Anna died.
So there's no one left to take care of you now.
Weird, but it's gonna get weirder.
My little Frank. No one knows you the way Iris does.
Is she undoing her dress? Then he Nurses? Jesus, this movie is utterly ridiculous and we're not even 15 minutes in. I mean, this is some pretty taboo stuff. And I gotta say, if he really wanted a nurse, he probably should have just stayed at the hospital. Fun fact, these two actually dated after working on this film.
Dopo a Roma ci siamo visti, ci siamo frequentati anche.
Later, he swings by the mortuary. Sweet, they're burying her in an aquarium. Then he shows us why he was a med school dropout again, shooting her up too. I think you're a little late, man. And this dude's watching, which is sort of going to be important later. I mean, it's slightly less tacked on than the voodoo we saw earlier. After the funeral, Frank heads out to dig up the plot. Hope that's the right one, otherwise this is a grave mistake on his part. At any rate, he should be careful. He's got at least one foot in the grave here. On the way home, he gets a flat, and of course, the cops show up. Hey, have you seen any shady characters selling dead baboons around here? We've been getting reports of a lot of monkey business in this area. They head off, but don't look now. Frank's picked up a hitchhiker.
What do you want?
Ain't it obvious? Leave though. Come on, Abe.
Look, I have a strict ass, gas, or grass policy, and the ass is already taken care of. For some reason, Frank takes her back to his place and lets her sleep in the car while he gets to work on his dead girlfriend. Because sure, what could go wrong? I'm gonna have to judiciously cut here so the prudes at YouTube don't have a cow. But this is the infamous autopsy scene. And for years, people have speculated that D'Amato used real cadavers. He didn't.
Tutti pensano che io abbia girato delle scene su delle vere autopsie, ma io credo che sia inutile, se uno fa un film, andare a quantomeno...
If taxidermying your dead girlfriend wasn't enough, he then makes out with the heart. Dude must have been a big Janis Joplin fan. And if you guessed his hitchhiker was gonna wake up and see all of this, well, give yourself a screenwriter's credit. Rather than flee, she goes on the offensive, but Frank gets the upper hand and goes all Richard Pryor on her and rips out her fingernails. You could say he nailed it. Also, do you kids even remember Richard Pryor? Christ, I'm old. By the way, I love that Frank wears every piece of white clothing he owns when taxidermying bodies. That's a special kind of confidence. After he finishes her off, he's like, damn it, just doubled my workload. I'm an idiot. But don't worry, this is why he has a maid. Iris shows up for his late-night nursing session, ready to help. Frank, please keep me abreast of these situations so I can help you. Then it turns into the weirdest version of Mannequin ever. Anyway, with all of that done, it's time to get back to the baboon subplot. You didn't think Joe D'Amato was done with that baboon, did you? Frank's partner needs a taxidermied ASAP.
What is it?
Listen, I've got a client who's interested in that baboon, the one I gave you the other day. Is it ready?
Because this random rich guy really needs a dead baboon to tie his room together. I mean, don't we all? And of course, this guy just starts snooping around the place. I mean, is that what rich people do when they come to buy a stuffed baboon? Do they just wander around the premises? Turns out this is a ruse. This is the guy from the cemetery who saw Frank shooting up his dead girlfriend. And apparently he's a mortician who moonlights as a detective or something too. Look, D'Amato and the team are just making this up as they go. Let's just roll with it. Frank and Iris need to get rid of the hitchhiker's body, so they decide to dissolve her in the bathtub. Guess they never saw that episode of Breaking Bad that demonstrates why this is a bad idea. But before they can get started, Iris has to chop her up. Frank's like, Iris, can't you just cleave her alone? And it looks like Frank isn't the only one making extra work for himself around the house. Iris here is going to have her hands full getting all that blood out of the grout. Then they're finally done. And you could call this a real bloodbath. Afterwards, Frank is like, I'm ready for my milk break. Then it turns into the weirdest ASMR video ever. Gross. But Frank's a good boyfriend. He heads upstairs to see his girlfriend. Hey babe, Iris made dinner. Want some? No thanks, I'm stuffed. Afterwards, Frank turns to Iris for help with his sex addiction. She's helping him beat it. You could say her aid has been vital in keeping things from getting out of hand. Meanwhile, in our other movie, the mortician is getting intel on Frank.
Frank Weiler, age 22, son of Bertrand and Emma. Her maiden name was Straub.
Who is this guy? Italian Quincy? Frank, meanwhile, is picking up another woman.
Look, my house is right down the road. Come over there.
I'll fix you up an emergency bandage, then I'll take you back in the car.
He brings her back to his place for some erotic Ben Gay application. Man, I sure hope that's not the jerkins he and Iris used earlier. Then he makes out with her on the bed next to his dead girlfriend.
Hell yeah.
Of course the jogger spots the corpse and is like, hey, wait a minute, you aren't the only thing stiff in this room. Too bad for her, Frank's more hungry than horny and bites her throat out. Tasty. Luckily for him, Iris is here to help clean up. This time they're going to use the brick pizza oven. You could say she's on fire. How do you like your jogger, Frank? Medium or well done? Iris is getting jealous and wants dead Anna gone too, but Frank's not ready for that.
She's going to stay with me forever.
Forget about her, she's dead.
But they reach a compromise.
I'll do everything you ask me to. I'll marry you.
Aw, they're gonna be like a creepy family, like the Addams family, only with more necrophilia. Iris is getting ready for a big day. I don't know, lady, you should probably just wear something that makes you look dead if you really want to win him over. But before the wedding, Starsky and Hutch here show up asking questions about the missing jogger.
A young girl was reported missing 3 days ago. She went out to do some jogging, and she never came back.
Iris takes them on a tour of the house, starting in the basement. Thank God that baboon is hidden. After ditching the cops, the engagement party can get rolling. Iris has invited her whole family, it seems.
Now, maybe you think I'm old-fashioned.
I know you are.
All right, I am then, I suppose. But I believe in marriage, and I'm glad Iris has finally hooked someone.
Looks like they're all retired carnies. Here's the bearded lady prepping for Movember. Frank shows up and he looks thrilled to be here. Well, that was awkward. Frank heads upstairs to be with his one true love, while Iris realizes you just can't come between a boy and his corpse. Hey, remember the weird mortician detective? Yeah, he's still in this movie. He's snooping around the house again. Wonder if that's ever gonna pay off. And while he's doing that, Frank's out here being a flock of seagulls. Dude really ran far away. Back at the house, I'm starting to think this guy is a closet inspector. Then he wanders right into this jump scare. After that, he snaps some pictures, then heads back to his darkroom to see what develops. I'll be honest, it feels a little late for a blackmail subplot with like 15 minutes left in this movie, but sure, why not? Meanwhile, Iris wants to be the woman of the house, but Frank isn't having it.
You simply can't go any further with this. Get rid of it. Get rid of your stupid little doll.
No!
He gives Iris a taste of his pimp hand. I guess the wedding is off. Afterwards, Frank heads out to the bar, alone, because Anna can be a bit cold when around other people. He's got his eye on this chick. I know this movie is Italian, but with these moves, she's clearly from San Francisco. Then, Beyond the Darkness basically turns into an episode of Three's Company. Frank's got his dancing queen taking a bath, his dead girlfriend chilling in bed, Iris on maid duty, and then Anna's sister shows up at the door.
My school term's over, so I'm leaving tomorrow, but I wanted to say goodbye to Frank if he has a second.
This dude's a regular Jack Tripper. I'll be honest, out of all of this, I'm mostly curious how Frank and Iris kept working together after their engagement fell apart. Seems like a tough working environment to me.
Don't let her get away.
Don't worry, I won't.
I don't think we're going to get an answer, but this facial expression probably tells you all you need to know. Iris leaves Anna's sister in the dark, literally, and then things get even crazier when this ghost voice starts jibber-jabbering.
Eleanor! You shouldn't have come here.
Come on, Iris, I know your voice. Also, she has the brightest lighter in history. I've seen dimmer floodlights than that thing. She wanders right into the dead sister jump scare. Then Iris goes all Norman Bates. But before she can exact her revenge by killing the only living girl Frank might be able to love, he bursts in and they go toe-to-toe. Or knife to hand. Then Iris stabs him right in the junk. Talk about a cut-rate vasectomy. Then they fight, and she rips his eye out. Wonder if he saw where that was going. But he stabs her right in the dairy farm. Hope she breast pumped him some milk before this happened. Frank doesn't care for formula. Oh, and here comes the mortician dude, because there's 3 minutes left in this thing. I guess we better pay that off. He decides to break into the place. Frankly, as much time as he's spent here, I'm sort of shocked he doesn't have a key. He finds Frank down at the oven. Frank croaks, and then this dude finds the corpse. Then we get some exposition. This guy was hired to get Anna's corpse back for her parents.
I only know that those bastards got in touch with me, and they gave me back the body of this poor girl only after I paid out a large sum in ransom.
With the deed done, he's got her back in the coffin, but they might have to bury him after this jump scare because that's not Anna, that's her still alive sister. Even 40 years after its initial release, Beyond the Darkness is still pretty gruesome. It's got this fantastic mix of sleaze, perversion, and splatter that was essentially the hallmark of Joe D'Amato's filmography.
Come regista mi definisco un artigiano professionale.
It's no exaggeration to say that when D'Amato passed, no one ever stepped in and filled that void, and trash cinema lovers are worse off for it.
Quindi io, Fulci, Freda, siamo una categoria in via di estinzione, allora...
But can Beyond the Darkness dig up enough body parts to fill 5 barf bags? Let's go to the gore card! In terms of gross anatomy, Beyond the Darkness delivers. We're treated to ripped out eyeballs, cleaver dismemberment, corpse love, bodies dissolved in acid, one devoured heart, pig guts, and probably a bunch of other stuff I'm forgetting. The gore alone is pretty great, and that weird sleazy vibe the film has gives it even more oomph. And because of that, Joe D'Amato earns another 5 barf bag rating. This is definitely a sick flick. Looking for more D'Amato gore? Then be sure to check out my review of Anthropophagus. You'll find a link here on the screen. I'll meet you over there. Until next time, I'm Mike Bracken, aka The Horror Geek, bringing you all the splatter that matters.